All right. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. Today we're going to do another class, if you saw the last one, and we're going to focus on more of a Halloween display. If you enjoyed the last class, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. Chris and I are both going to build displays together so that you can see at the end how we can make them work together, either side by side or front and back. So we hope to go through the entire process so you can enjoy the finished product. So we are going to start by talking about something we did before, and then we're going to go into display construction.
Sounds good.
All right. So a couple months ago, we had our normal class, and then we had a separate class where people could bring their own tools and create their own display, following us at the front, kind of following what we're doing, sort of a template, if you will. So we had created this display, which was, of course, just not painted by the end. We just wanted to focus on carving. And it looked like this, but it only had these two levels. It didn't have that third level. The idea was that it was actually going to be this side, and there would be a house all the way down at the bottom, two houses there. But when I took it home and I thought, well, you know, I like to fit something more elevations into it, I just flipped it around, built another section here so that we could fit three pieces on it. And then I did the painting, which is super simple. We're going to show that today. It's basically a two-step process, and it's pretty effective. It works with pretty much any Halloween theme or display you want to do. It works really well with Day of the Dead if you're into that, because it's got that black and white kind of look to it. But we're going to show it. We have examples over there of different houses. So we're going to do that. And then I also added a backdrop, because sometimes when you have, depending on what you have behind your display, it's always nice to have a little backdrop. So this is a super simple 1-inch piece of foam with some holes so that the cords can go through, and it can be pinned or whatever you want to do. So, and then what I did at home is I did the landscaping. So I added a little tombstone over here, some fencing, and then some trees and accessories that I had just to finish it completely. Okay.
So what Stefan and I are going to do is we're each going to create a display using 5 pieces of 2-inch foam. So our maximum elevation to start with is going to be 10 inches. And our hope is that not only can you see that there are variants of what you can do with when you're both starting with the same materials, but that at the end we'll have 2 displays that can kind of work side by side or together or stacked or kind of elevated behind one another, etc.
That's right. And I brought extra pieces of foam, and those are just scrap pieces, but they can add to our elevation just to make it a little higher. So that's going to be simple but fun.
Sounds good. So we've each got 10 inches in 2-inch increments, and just to show you that there's more than one way to slice it up, Stefan and I are going to work in opposite directions. So I'm going to work from the base layer. I'm going to give that its shape, and I'm going to work up to the top elevation. And Stefan is going to start at the top, and he's going to draw his elevations, and then he's going to work down until he's got the base layer made.
Yep, this way you can choose whatever style you want. Some people just take stacks of cut foam like I have on the floor and just kind of make it up as they go, but I think this is a good way to go. So we're going to design, and then as we're carving, you know, we might stray away a little bit from our design because visually something makes more sense or whatever. So this is just kind of our first stab at it, and then
the nice part about Halloween is we're drawing in black marker, but we're going to paint everything black so we don't have to worry about the marker still being there after we cut.
Yeah, we don't need to sand it down. All right, so my thought, like you see on this display, obviously you want to have some good variation of elevation. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of trace what I'm thinking would be a fun layout. And we're going to show it in a minute here.
So I'm starting from the base, and what I wanted to do was just give it kind of a rough shape around the edges, but I want to leave one part flat because I'm going to carve a staircase that goes all the way down to the table level. So if you're just going to set it on a table, there would be stairs all the way down.
So here, I'm starting with 3 main elevations. So this one, I'm gonna make it my highest one, either at 10 or 12. We'll start with 10. And then this one, I wanna have a nice difference. So I'm gonna go with 6-inch here, 10-inch here. And then this is gonna be a foreground, little level, maybe for the accessory, the figurines, trees, whatever. So I'm gonna go for 4 inches there. I think it's backwards. Sorry. And then the rest of it, we'll play with it. And then the display itself is gonna, the base of it, the very bottom is gonna be just kind of rounded a little bit, but I don't wanna shave too much off because I wanna keep some display space for the bottom. You can do that, just like that. So I'm gonna work my way down from the top, so which is a different kind of scenario than what he's doing over there. And then we'll see where we end up.
Yeah.
Now what you don't want to do is start gluing things together too quickly, because sometimes it's a lot easier to cut some of this separately before you put the layers together.
And I think Stefan's talking specifically about like carving edges. Sometimes if you glue it together ahead of time, it's difficult to get a tool kind of into a crevice or like a negative slope.
Yeah.
And so you wind up with these little flat spots where you can't reach because the foam is just kind of out of the way.
That's right.
But if you leave the elevations unglued, you can kind of carve them and then glue them down.
Right. Design on this side, I decided to do 10-inch, 6-inch, and 4-inch. It's always nice. You could have individual towers if you want, but it's always nice to link them, like Chris is also going to do in some of it. And so I'm going to do a staircase over here, going from 4-inch to 6-inch, and one from 6 to 10. So this way, visually, this one will be lower, this one will be higher. Now, if you want to take advantage of your staircase to display something, make a landing, just like a 2-inch, 3-inch landing, so that you can put an accessory. Because if you make your steps too narrow, obviously you can't fit a figurine there. So just think about that. We might do that. I just need to see the span from here to there, how it works out as I carve it. So,
for people that don't have a bow cutter like the one Stefan's using, I'm demonstrating that you can also cut one layer at a time just using the hot knife. This is a 4-inch knife. It will go through 2 layers of foam, but honestly it's easier to just do one. You have to kind of go at the knife's pace and not your pace. But for somebody that is only making 1 or 2 displays a year, this is a wonderful tool. And like Stefan said, he's going from the top down. So he's cutting all 4 layers at once. I'm going from the bottom up. And so what I'm going to wind up doing is cutting each layer individually. I would say that the technique that Stefan is using is probably a little more advanced, and mine's a little more beginner friendly when it comes to like visualizing the display ahead of time. So it's just kind of whatever you're comfortable with.
either one works. Either one works. At the end, sometimes your best creations are the quickest one. I remember spending time on a display for like 2 weeks, and then after that I did a display for like half a day and it looked better than the other one. Like, what happened? That's because sometimes you're overthinking it, so you want to make sure that you play with it. It's only foam, so if you do something you don't like, not that we want to waste foam or anything, but it's not too bad. So as you can see, I'm going through the whole thing, and then it'll be easy for me, but I want to make sure that my staircases are linked together.
I'm going to have more or less the same thing, but because I'm going from the ground up, I'm just kind of like copying the layer below it, and then when I get up higher, I'll just use less of that layer, if that makes sense. And so by the time I'm done, I think our displays are going to look relatively similar in terms of elevations.
Yes.
And then I may carve out a little tunnel or something in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're going to be the same size because we're using the same base, but I think there's going to be some nice feature difference. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Okay, so I've got my outline cut out of all the layers, okay, except for my base. I don't want to touch it. That stays full because that needs to be as big as possible. So now I need to cut away anything that's less than 10 inch because that's my 10. There's 8 here, 2 there, 10 inch. So now I'm going to cut away at it, and I just have to be careful because I want to make sure that I keep my staircase as well. So I'm going to take this over here. See how quick the bow cutter is? We might get a call from Lisa Johnson. She wants to say hello, so we might put her on FaceTime. I forgot to tell her that we didn't have the projector going, so we won't see her on the projector, but I'll just show my phone. And, she was running into a haircut appointment, and she said, I really need this haircut. I said, I'm sure you look great. She says, no, I don't. So she might give us a call. That's why we have my phone there on alert in case she calls in. So now you can see, if I can hold it together before I glue it together, you can see I have my 10 inch over there going down to 6. And now I'm going to cut this to 4, okay? Remember there's a 2 inch down there. I know it's kind of confusing. I've always done my displays like that for some reason. But a lot of people are like, what the heck are you doing? Sorry.
Which is why I'm also showing you how to do it from the bottom up, which I found is probably the preferred method for somebody that's just coming in and trying to do their first display.
Okay, now I will be ready to glue this all together and carve. So, I think our glue gun is...
It's hot.
Is it hot? Okay, good. That. Hopefully the stick is long enough. I think it is. All right. Now the other thing that's really nice about this kind of display is that you have minimal planning required for wiring. So like in Chris's case, you know, unless you're doing some kind of a vignette in the center of a table, that's different. But you can have a building here, the cord can fall off. If you want something here, then he can make a hole or the tunnel he was talking about just to make sure the cord can get to the back. So it's a lot simpler than the big displays where you have to think about all the wires.
And since yours is more of a 360, were you thinking of cutting drop holes in it?
No, it'll still be
Off
going to the back. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. And then later on we could add a backdrop. We don't have the foam, but you know, when we bring them back or whatever.
Yeah.
Deck. Now we're starting to have something here, Chris. We're going at about the same pace. His are pretty much all kind of rough cut, mine as well. Extra foam again, so we'll see if we need to use that for extra elevation. So now here it is, 10, 6, and 4. Base layer goes underneath. Now, Chris was mentioning the taper effect. So this is a good time for me to do that. So what I like to do, I kind of like these displays where the top is larger and it kind of narrows down, especially for Halloween or North Pole. Those are pretty nice. So I'm going to take this here and I'm going to taper it off with that. I'm not sculpting it. I'm just doing the tapering real quick because it's quicker than doing it with the small tools. Okay.
My technique is a little bit different. So what I'm actually doing is I took one of the router tools and I made kind of a jagged edge to it, and then I'm going to kind of carve my taper in manually with a smaller tool.
It all works. At the end, they might look exactly the same.
That's doubtful considering the talent discrepancy.
No, it's hard to go wrong with these things. Now, see how I tapered it in here, there. I left it out here because I don't want it all the same. So we're going to have a variation in here. I did a big one, so it helps me get started with that tapering. Now we have some opportunities here to enhance. Again, a little easier before I glue it to the base. My staircase here. I could have like a really nice arch cut out of it, so the staircase is empty underneath. Same with this one. So I'm going to do that with the straight knife because now it's starting to be a little too difficult to play with the bow cutter in there because it's starting to get a little narrow. All right.
So what I'm doing is, I mentioned that I just made kind of a jagged edge, and as I'm carving, I can kind of just wiggle the router back and forth, and that will create kind of a jagged, rocky feel to the carving. And I'm actually leaving kind of a clean edge up at the top because I want to do some brickwork, and we'll describe how that looks later.
Little funky thing here. First, I'm going to take a little piece off. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and carve it like this. Take this off, and then I'm going to do the rest here. Okay. So
I know.
here it is right here. You get a bonus staircase if you want from your cutout to put somewhere. All right. If you don't like it, you could recarve it. And I'm going to do the other one here, smaller, a little easier. Just like that. Okay. It's not that hard, is it?
Of course it is.
Chris is the master at stairs also. Okay, I'm going to take this. Do you want this, Chris, or you?
Yeah, I would like the router back. No, not that one. I want my router.
Yes. Not the one that carries some significant risks. Okay. Now we have a good working model. Again, I think you can see how easier it is before I glue it to the base, because then it becomes a little awkward. So now I'm going to do it from the back. It'll be a little bit easier. And I'm just going to cut a nice little chunk out of it. You don't have to be precise about it, but for this kind of stuff, I like to do a little line just to have a guide and see where I'm going here. I'm going to make another one here. This way, you can see through here and through there, and it'll be a little more interesting than just solid foam. All right, for that, simply using the straight knife, working on its own here.
As I mentioned earlier, I used the bow cutter to carve kind of a tunnel through mine, and that just kind of opens up some possibilities for a water feature or a cave. We could have like maybe a backlight in there to kind of shine through the display. So there's a lot of options. What are you doing?
Unplanned cut. But it's foam. We can cut you. We can glue it.
Glue it. Just like a haircut, right?
Yes. See what happens? I didn't put glue on the staircase, so I'm going to go easy on the arches. And Chris and I are actually going to use the same tool to sculpt. And depending on your motion, the way you're holding the knife, it can look completely different. So This is a cool style for Halloween or North Pole. You can't really go wrong. Just gotta go at it. All right. So now we are pretty much ready to go ahead and glue that to our base in 2 sections. Okay. Here. Okay.
Ready for the sculpting?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Now you can see it on the base. Okay. The base is going to get carved as well, but now I can really go into the carving. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start carving anyway. All right. Sorry. The style that I'm going for is kind of jagged rocks. So I'm going to go kind of in and out and do a slightly different style than Chris so that you can see 2 different, slightly different results. Here I'm going to make a nice little landing for one of the tall maple trees. So you plan a little bit, and then I'll put it right at the corner. I think it'll look really good in that corner. And all these edges is what's going to get hit by our dry brushing technique and get the coloring. It's a very simple painting technique, but it works quite well.
What I'm doing right now is I'm going back with a knife and I'm creating some horizontal lines where I want bricks, and then once I've got my horizontal lines drawn, I'll go ahead and draw the bricks in with the same tool. So it's just the nice part about doing a Halloween display is you don't have to have a particularly steady hand because it doesn't really matter if the bricks are all that straight. But we want to just make sure that basically all of the clean edges that we've left behind get touched by some kind of carving, whether it's with a router tool to create the jagged look or a knife or engraver to create kind of a brick look.
Something here that I think is worth mentioning is in some places I join the base with the other layer. I cut them together just like that. And the reason for that is I don't really want it to look like, you know, a display sitting on the bigger base. I want it to be part of it. So I want to use some space for displaying, but also make it look like it's part of it. Chris is pretty much doing the same thing through the sides.
When I get the engraver back, or the router back, I'll be making those same join cuts. So because I'm a little bit lazier than Stefan, I used a tool that we had pre-formed for cutting the stairs sideways. And so I've got one staircase going down from this level, and then there's a little landing here to Stefan's earlier point where there's just enough room that I could fit like a little accessory, somebody on their way up the stairs, and then another staircase all the way up to the top level. There's no way for anybody to get up to that level, but
Details!
Yeah. And then again, I've also got the little staircase going from the table to the display.
Yeah. One thing I like to do is have kind of a hanging rock formation. So right now this is just, you know, carved rock. But what I do is I go in here and I go and I carve behind a chunk here, all right? And I go from the other side until I go completely through it, trying to carefully leave a hanging piece. It makes more sense in a second when you can see through it. So I'm going to go in here, take that off, take this off, make it a little pointy, a little creepy looking. Okay. This. Okay. Let me give it a bit more so you can hopefully see it a bit. But all right, I don't know if you can see it, but this piece of rock here, it's kind of hollow here, so it's kind of hanging off the side over here. And when we paint it, it's going to look pretty cool. It's just a different thing to do by going back under. Now the tricky part is that if I go up to that seam, right, if there's no glue specifically on that layer to that layer here on that little rock, then it will fall off, right? But that's okay. You can just put a dot of glue and put it back. But because typically when I glue it, I don't put glue everywhere. I put glue mostly in the center. So that might happen, but it's no big deal. And then you can further kind of define it. And I realize it's kind of hard to see on white foam, but when it's painted, it should stick out a little bit as a different feature. All right, Chris, whenever you're ready, we'll switch.
Okay. And there's multiple methods of this, but you want to, before you paint, you want to kind of make sure you got all of the little loose pieces of foam off, because nothing's more frustrating than getting something all painted and then finding that there was a loose piece on there and under it is just the bare white foam. Sometimes you can use like an air compressor to do that. Sometimes just like a bristled brush to just kind of get them off of there. Sometimes the paint can will blow them off. It just kind of depends.
Yeah, yeah. You can take a paintbrush and kind of go in all the areas. And I shook it off pretty good earlier, so it looks like it's okay. But there's always that surprise piece that comes undone. It's like, ow! All right, so put it back, put that in the front.
So I've got a couple of little ledges in here where I can put a tree or a little accessory or a tombstone.
Okay, that will do.
You good?
Well, the router, and I'm going to find a little spot here that could look cool. I think here would be nice. And we're going to dig out a little hole for it. I'm just adding a little feature here real quick, Chris.
Cool.
Okay, you got your gloves. You're all ready to go. All narrow. Okay.
So we're going to dig your grave.
Dig a grave real quick. A little spot for tombstone right here. So, just like that. Shallow grave, and then a little bit of an angle above it so that this can stand sit a little crooked. So I've got paint from Michael's or Home Depot. This one is a chalk. They call it chalk paint. Okay. I like it because it dries really flat, not shiny. And this one is a milk paint, white one. So I got a gray and a white. And also this one dries really flat, which I think is pretty nice. So maybe what we'll do as a test, because so far I've been using the white because I like the contrast and it worked really well for Day of the Dead. But maybe one of us will use white, the other one will use gray, and we'll see if it makes a difference or not. But I think it'll be fun to do. Let's move this off. All the accessories here, these get they get added at the end as the finishing touches. The only thing that would have been planned was the little walking path. Okay, that. Now, what you want to do here is you're better off to go too dry than too wet. Because if you go too wet on your paintbrush, you're gonna have to do some more black again because it's gonna be too much. So you really wanna go dry. So I'm gonna take a scrap piece of foam. I'll take my 1-inch over here. All right. And I'm going to put some paint here. I didn't miss a call from Lisa. Oh, hang on, guys. Won't work today. Sorry. Okay. Maybe their haircut didn't go so well. Don't push it. All right, and I'm gonna put some right on my foam here. Of course, you can use a container and stuff, but this is gonna be my scrap piece of foam. And I'm gonna put it on my paintbrush like this, but I'm really gonna paint this and keep it, I mean, it's not dry, but it's fairly dry. And here you're trying to just hit the edges. So we're gonna I like it. Just doing that will start to make the edges pop. And then at the end, I always come back with a mist of black again, just to tone it down in some areas, especially since I'm using white. But just trying to hit the edge everywhere. The staircases are cool too, but I'm gonna wait till my paintbrush is a little drier as well. Super simple, effective. See how it's starting to come out?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay. Here, you're just hitting it. Don't worry if you put too much. It's easy to take the paint again, come back. But and I try to go. You can use a smaller one if you want to get to some places. But the trick is if you get down to spots that's hard to reach, we're going to use moss. You know, put some moss there. And so now that my paintbrush is fairly dry, I'm going to do a little bit of. See if I can grab it here on the bricks here. Just keep doing it until you start to see them pop a bit. The bristles are not going to go into the little lines, so that'll be good. Okay, and then when the paint dries, it's also going to tone down a bit. At first, of course, it's wet, it's a little shiny, but it's going to tone down and go to flat. And by the time we put some sand and some blended turf, you're going to have something more interesting than just the black and white as well. So nice big surface here. Pretty simple. Just hit it like that, and it completely changes the surface. You know, see that?
Looks nice.
I like kind of the top-down brushing like that because it hits the edge better. If you go like this, you're kind of catching the other side. If you go sideways, you catch a bit more of the inside, but it's hard to go wrong with that technique. Nice big wall here. So, and you can see that you get a lot of mileage. I mean, I haven't even reloaded the paintbrush yet. So here I've got a little nick, so when Chris is back, I'll fix that. All right.
What about the bricks? You don't do the bricks.
I do the bricks, so I'm gonna just do a slight edges there, but I'm gonna come back with some black on them at the end as well. And then I'll do this over here as well. And then the cool part too is to hit your stairs.
Yeah.
This is just like that.
Oh yeah.
And then suddenly your stairs look a lot better than just black. 2 seconds. This. So I was talking about I like to have 3 landscape material, at least for Halloween. I like sand because it contrasts with everything else. I like the blended turf because it tones down all the gray. And then I like natural moss because that gives you that green pop to it. But that's completely to your discretion, what style you like. So I'm going to start with some blended turf because that's my base layer. And that's super easy to apply. Thank you, Chris. All right. So the blended turf is applied kind of from the top. And it's a light coat. So I'm going to start with kind of the top here. Just give it a nice mist. Just like that, this side too. And then I'm gonna open that to this section with the holes, not the big opening, okay? And then from the top, at least that's my preference. And then just kind of let it go, season the turkey.
And the table.
Okay. Some of this will fall off, so I put a little extra. Okay, because the glue is good, but it's not meant to catch everything. So shake off, and now you've got a different finish. Now, some people might prefer just to leave it black and white too, but that's one way that I like to do it. Now I'm going to put some sand on this one. Sand is a little trickier. That's where the white glue comes handy because it sticks a little better. But I'm not trying to make some very thick layer of it, just more of a pathway. So I want to put some on my stairs and then maybe along the edge here, going up here, going here, just to kind of give the feel that there's a walking path here compared to the rest of the display. So I'm going to go put that on over top my green stuff, which is kind of nice because it also kind of fixes it in place, and a little bit at the bottom. And then take this sand from I believe Hobby Lobby. Now it doesn't come with a shaker top, so you've got to be a little careful, but it's only gonna stick partially. So I'm gonna put that here, here, and then we're gonna brush off the excess. Okay. Upside down, it's sticking pretty good. And I'm going to take this, do a little bit of brushing, kind of dirty up the display, if you will. Yeah. And then on your display, we might try the gray paint just to see how that looks compared to the white. Now I'm going to take some moss and some...
Side to side, or still top to bottom on the vertical edges?
Doesn't matter. I mean, I like top to bottom, but some places are hard to reach. I'm going to take some moss and floral pins down there.
Moss is over here.
Okay. Grab that. And I'll
A
get...
little wet on the corner.
The pins are
Is
right
it?
there.
Pins are right there.
Thank you, Chris. All right. I like the sheet moss. They come in like little clumps like that. You can use it as a toupee if you're desperate. No, don't try this. You can edit that out.
That's the blooper right there.
People will comment on YouTube, you should use it. All right, so the sheet moss is nice because you can kind of rip it in the sections that you need. Some of the other moss, I think actually like the rest of this bag, because this came from a different thing. This is more like loose little bits, you know. It works too, but for that we might have to use the glue gun because otherwise you're gonna have to pins everywhere. But this is good. So whenever I need a big spot, you see when I did my arches down here, you can see lines, right? See lines down there.
Yeah.
Because when I cut my arches, my knife went, in the next layer, which is no big deal because this is a great spot for a nice little mossy spot anyways. So that's where I'm going to put some moss here. We'll pin it, but you can glue it. The hot glue works well for this too. You can see Chris's side there, how well that's popping out too. Probably my favorite part of the display is the finishing. I like the details, and of course dressing it up with the buildings and everything, but I really like to landscape the display. Look at it. And then for her, put her up here. All right. Now let's look at a couple of trees to destroy. All right, so I'm going to leave some fencing for the other stuff, but let's look at what we have for options. So so the base here, sometimes you need pliers for this. Oh no, okay. So it just comes off. All right, and then you can bend it, so it's pretty cool. So now the fences, you want to use them. It could be as a backdrop for a tree, something like this.
Yeah.
Oh, Tony probably can't see, but they look a little nicer if you use multiple sections as opposed to just one. Or we could go with something like a railing at the top of the bridge over here, so that there's a kind of a backdrop. Let me see if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we're going to use that. All right. So let's see here. Since it's only, oh no, this is the one from home. It's 12 inch. Okay. So typically, I would take the carving tool, make a bigger groove than what I have right now, set it in there, and do some little dots of glue. Now, I'm not going to do it because my boxes for this are 12 inches.
Pin it down.
So I'm going to pin it down, and then I can take it off. Otherwise, I would glue it in, put a little bit of moss, and looks pretty good. But we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go at the very edge here, and we're going to cover our pin with some moss. Love these fences. The accessories really kind of help finish everything off. Okay, so just like that. Over here. Now I'm going to take little clumps of moss, pretty small, and then we'll take the glue gun if it's still hot.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And then we're going to cover the pins. Same thing, if there's pins here, I can cover them as well. Oh, Chris, that is looking good.
Yeah, I like this kind of gray-green color. I think it looks a little more gray on than it does when it's just kind of sitting over there. But I'm using a slightly wetter brush for it, just to get a little bit more coverage.
Yep. Yeah, the intensity is up to you. I mean, you can make it look more gray than black, and you need a tiny amount of paint. It's very, very simple. So in the meantime, I'm gonna make these trees look a little better. Let's do that. We're gonna do our
Some 77.
yeah, let's do that, and I'm gonna do the blended turf. Should do it. All right, just a little mist here. Well, that's more than a mist probably, but okay, just like that. Now let's put some more, and we're gonna do a little sand patch. Excellent. So the reason why we're finishing them the same is so that they can be used together.
Right.
Because we're gonna show at the end how they can be used together. Put some sand in a little grave here. Perfect. And then finally, we can put a little bit of moss, but let's glue our tombstone. We have a little tombstone somewhere. We have a few. You can take one out of the package. Oh, there it is, right there.
Where's the gun?
Right here. I'll put some glue for you, and you squeeze it in there. And then we'll turn it around to show it. All right, so there you have it over here. See that? So good. Oh, jeez. I almost bought a new house today.
At least it was a silver.
Hey, it's resin.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so now we're down to. These guys are used to it. That happens. Down to the moss. So let's put some moss, and let's see here. What do I get? I've got this. What kind of moss do you have? Is this like sheet moss, or is it?
I think it's loose.
It's okay.
Bright green though.
All right. In that case, we're going to use our glue gun here, and then let's see here. I think a little clump right here would be good. Here, I'll give you that, and just put some little clumps in there. It's not bad, you know. In the span of 2 hours, we'll have 2 displays done.
Wow.
A third one that was already kind of done, but landscape.
Takes me all week.
With the moss, like when you're applying it, especially when it's loose like this, more is better. You can shove it in there and then kind of pull off what doesn't stick.
Put some down here and some up here. And then let's do a little clump up here because I think we'll fully see it. Good. I don't need to worry about the back too much. And okay, down in that corner if you like. Great. Okay, good. Let's grab some houses, and then we can, if needed, we'll add some more moss.
So we got room for 2 on this one, right?
Yeah, room for 2. That's right. And then we can transfer the other ones. Well, those are 2 quick setups. What Chris and I wanted to show was that using vignettes, individual vignettes, gives you some flexibility. So if you have a table at home that's, you know, a wider table, maybe 4 foot by 2 foot or whatever, or you can use like a folding table like this, and you can take your displays and make a scene together side by side, and you can take moss, right? Go ahead, take some moss, and you blend them together here so that really they kind of look like all one piece. Okay, you can keep going like that. If your table has a room, you can even have buildings on your table directly. That gives you another level to play with, especially since we did some staircases that go all the way to the bottom. Then you expand your display. Now another way, Chris is gonna help with that.
If you've got a little bit more depth to play with, you can just get some old foam or like a box or something, cover it in like some black fabric or burlap or whatever, and you can kind of create a multi-tiered display because we both have different elevations.
Hang on to the bottom.
And you can build it up that way with like moss around the sides to just kind of hide the edges.
Use black foam, whatever, and
Right.
exactly. And then here you could do something creative to hide this, or build a separate piece that goes down there. But you can play a lot with these vignettes. I think they're useful. They're easy to make because you can hold them. You know, if Chris was trying to paint something that's twice as big, it's a lot more awkward. Easy to store, and I think they're just a lot of fun.
Let's take one layer of
Hold it a
that
minute.
foam
Wait,
out.
wait, wait.
Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You could even,
Yeah.
because they're all the same width, we've got, if I match the 6 inches, I can actually just kind of turn that to the side, and then that staircase will lead right to the next
That's a good
level of the display.
Yeah. Does it look hard to do, or does it does? Yeah.
How do you do all the lighting?
I'm only the most creative person on the planet is why.
Well, yeah, we try not to have to pre-plan too much, but I think Chris and I tried to demonstrate that if you just stack foam together, put little piles, carve them, you could be surprised what the result
Wow,
is.
that looks like a huge display.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to have our next class on July 27th, so hopefully if we have another video, it'll be posted the following week. Thank you again. Questions about the display, please call Millie's at 480-893-3777.